Books teach us, they inspire us, they challenge us, and they expand our horizons. Books contain the best thoughts of the greatest minds in history, but the problem is, there are millions to choose from. So what should you invest your time reading? What should you spend your money on? How do you sort through all the bullshit and find the good shit? You let the superior men do the work. Matt and Jay take the best books, pick the most important points, and distill them down to a concentrated 30-minute podcast. We help you find the books you need to read and why you need to read them. You may even learn something. So take out your coffee, tea, a glass of wine, or a good IPA. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. Welcome to the Superior Men Bookcast. And welcome to the Superior Men Bookcast. I am your host, Matt, here in the studio with my fellow host, Jathan.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, nighttime.
Good night! All right.
It's book time.
It is book time. Wherever you are, it is book time. And our book today is Ready Player One. Fantastic. It's our second fiction book that we did on here. So we love fiction books. We just don't do them as often as we should, I guess.
I was gonna say it's been time. Our first about a dozen or so books were nonfiction, and then we really are big believers in having fictional material.
Yeah, having both.
There's so many great books. This book absolutely qualifies. A little bit different. And also the same. We did 1984 as a fiction book. This one also kind of feels a little bit like 1984. For those of you who have not watched the movie,
well, that's what we were going to say. This is not the movie. This is the book.
This is the book. They are different, but they start the same. Start in the year 2045, and the future is kind of an ugly place. And Wade Watts, our protagonist, is really only happy when he's plugged into a virtual utopia known as the OASIS. It is a worldwide virtual connective universe. It has replaced the internet. He spends every day searching for James Halliday's Easter egg and the possibility of billions of dollars in riches for whoever finds it. But he is not the only one searching for the egg, and soon things are going to get very, very interesting and uncomfortable.
Yeah, and you know, it's funny because we just go, it's crazy. It's this whole virtual reality world that everybody lives in, and I go, that's nuts. How could anybody do something like that? And I go, but just think about not very long ago at all, we just had Fortnite had a in-game concert with Travis Scott that was 12 million viewers all watching it, on their phones or whatever. So it's like, I don't know. This is not that far out from reality. I know everything's always set in a dystopian future, but I think it's pretty good. So by the way, this book is by Ernest Cline. The book was published in 2011. Movie was out in 2018, 2017. It's actually a pretty quick turnaround from book being published out to a movie. So let's look at this. What does Cline set out to do here? What is the purpose of this book? So I think you can read it as just like a casual story, just on its own, and be like, "This is pretty cool. It's a fun, it's a fun adventure, novel." And you could just stop there. But there's definitely some darker subtext to it. It's a very bleak future, talking about the addiction, loneliness, self-loathing. I mean, there's a lot to it. So I think that, obviously when you scratch the surface, get down a little bit deeper, it's going to be a little bit better. So
yeah, there's Cline has, for a novel about video games, which is really what this is all about, video games and the 1980s, and really kind of both of those things, like right in the middle of those two things. There's a lot more. It's a lot darker than you would think on the surface. Who do you think is going to really appreciate this audience-wise?
Well, I think on the surface, anybody who loves the 80s or has a nostalgia to the 80s would like it, just again on the surface, because those are some major themes. However, I will say, I'm not a fan really of the 80s. That's not like a big draw for me, and I really like this book. So, but anybody who likes, kind of nerdy things or video games or I love seeing different views of the future. So anybody like that, I think, would like it. So who wouldn't like it?
Well, if you can't stand the words Xbox or PlayStation, this is probably not going to be for you. Not a big fan of technology, so if you think 5G caused the coronavirus because technology is bad, you probably won't like this book.
Yeah.
Matt, how challenging would you say Ready Player One is?
It's very easy to read. It's 386 pages. Probably take you 10-ish, 12-ish hours to read. The audiobook's about 15 hours. By the way, I listened to the audiobook with Will Wheaton. Fantastic. If you don't know who he is, Google him, and then you're like, oh yeah, I know who he is.
He's actually, what's one of the weirdest meta references ever, he's actually referenced in the book, unrelated, because the audio came several years after, but they talk about Will Wheaton in the book, even though he wasn't yet the audio producer and reader. It's like, what? This is bizarre. Okay, overall book reviews for Ready Player One. It's kind of the video game novel. Yeah.
Well, and consequently, the video game book. You may not have realized that this was a book prior to being the movie, but it's 23,000, almost 24,000 reviews, 4.6 stars on Amazon. Number 1 in Audible for hard science fiction. I don't know. What about soft science fiction? I'm not quite sure. I have a lot of categories there. Number 2 in adventure science fiction.
Totally logical. Number 15, Amazon in the Kindle section for time travel science fiction.
Which, if you've read this book, there's not really time travel. It's it's sort of a virtual reality, but whatever. I don't know.
It just goes to show, if you write a book that's popular enough and good enough, like, you can actually score in multiple sections of
you can transcend genres in Amazon. It's number 43 in history. It's but no, it's not.
No, it's not. It's number 17 under professional computers.
Yes.
And cucumbers.
Yeah. All right. So how'd you find out about this book, Jay?
I found out about the book because it was actually after the movie came out. I watched the movie first, loved it, then watched it about 6 or 7 more times, and eventually I've had a bunch of people, you're one of them, tell me that the book's so much better than the movie. And I'm like,
it's so cliche to say.
I really enjoyed the movie, and I love books. Let's do it.
Right.
So my brother had it on Audible, and I got a chance to listen to it. So cool. And y'all are right. It is better. It's one of those things where I always tell myself, do your best to, if possible, if there's a novel, start with the novel and then do the movie afterwards. I actually enjoyed doing it the way that I did. But I think you feel a bit different. How about you, Matt? How'd you first find out about the book?
I don't remember how I found out about it, but I read it in 2015-ish. So before the movie, when it was like an upcoming... Actually, no, I don't even think it was an upcoming movie at that point. I don't think I had heard anything about that. So I just did it when I was really in the heat of doing a lot of travel for work. So I listened to the book while I was traveling. Great book. And it ruined the movie for me. So that's how that one goes. I actually say it would. I prefer reading the books, and then if there is a movie, just never watching the movie. Other than, like, I wouldn't mind it if it was just on and I happened to walk through and I was like, oh yeah, that's Oasis, that's pretty cool, and then I walked away. But whatever, that's me. So let's talk about Ernest Cline.
Yeah, author of this book. He hasn't really written very much. This one, and then in 2015, Armada. This one came out in 2011, and other than that, it's kind of, I don't know that much about him. We know he's 48 years old this year. He grew up in Ohio, and Columbus is where Ready Player One is set. So there's kind of a feel.
Not a big jump there, yeah.
It's really interesting, when you live in a state and then you set a dystopian future inspired by your state. So maybe he's not an Ohio fan. I don't know where he lives right now, but I thought that was kind of interesting. Right. He grew up, as you can tell from the book, at huge 80s nerd fan, Star Wars, John Hughes, Dungeons and Dragons, all of the movies, all the music, comic books, and then of course video games. He had a wide array of jobs, including restaurant cook, web designer, radio personality, and computer tech support. Computer tech support featuring also in the novel story. He does live poetry performances and has won a couple of contests for that. So if you think that nerds can't write poetry and be romantic, you could still be correct. I don't know. I haven't heard him. But he's won a couple of contests in Austin, so that's pretty cool. And then the only other real information we can find out about this guy is that he created an elaborate Easter egg hunt. And I kind of don't want to go deep into it because we don't want to ruin the coolness of you guys when you read the book. Experiencing the Easter eggs, but let's just say that in real life, after you're done, go and look up the Easter eggs that he created in real life that have a real life kind of parallel for what happened in the game, and it's very, very neat what he did there with that. He's also, I don't know exactly how he's able to do it. He's a pretty slick guy and he's a great writer, but he was able to sell this book in a bidding war. Random House won it. Warner Brothers bought the rights to the screenplay the day after he finished this book, and then when Armada came out, well before the movie came out, the film rights to that book were sold for over $1 million. So I think maybe he has his finger on the pulse of video games, and as far as culture is concerned. I think that's pretty fascinating. Coming back really quick, Matt, book to movie translation. What would you say? Would you say good, not so good? So why did they even do it?
It's not my favorite. I mean, I don't know. It's hard to shit on Steven Spielberg doing stuff. And that's not what it is. It's just, I think that like the concepts were good. I just think that there was just overall differences. Like my whole feel for the book was not my whole feel for the movie. And I think that's what got me the most. It's a lot more of the movie is a lot more of a love story, and that's the protagonist's main thing. Like that's his main driving goal is his lady interest, and the book just is not that way. So, I mean, I think just other than those issues, it's always cool to see what's there, especially when you have something that you need to like develop a mind picture of as you're reading or listening to a book. And then when you kind of see it, there were a lot of things that I was like, this is exactly how I pictured it in my head. So those things were cool. And that's why I like reading a book first, because I get my own sort of thought in my head of what the thing is going to be, as opposed to somebody else's thought in their head of what they want it to be.
Agreed. Then you go back and you read the novel, it reminds you of the video game.
Yeah.
Rather than letting your own mind populate it. The one thing I will say about the movie that I was very, very impressed with is, considering the thousands, literally thousands, I'm not even exaggerating, of references to video games and characters and other movies and things like this. Spielberg was able, because he's Steven Spielberg, to get people to license the name and character and rights to these various things to use them in the movie, which I don't think anybody else on the planet could have done. That was pretty cool. Matt, let's talk a little bit about the kind of the themes. Get a little literary here for a minute. Talk about kind of what's happening thematically in the book here.
So really, like, a lot of it is, and we're just going to go real brief with this. So really, there's a lot of this, what is real, what isn't real, and with this OASIS. So the OASIS is this whole encompassing virtual reality thing, where most people spend most of their time. So that's what is real versus what isn't, and really the what isn't real, what is an illusion, is so much better than what reality actually is. Like, he lives in a trailer park, and worse than that, the trailer park is like stacked on top of each other. They call it the stacks, right? Isn't that what they called it?
Yeah.
And you just go, well, that sounds horrible. Trailer park's bad enough. Sorry, folks, if you live in a trailer park. But can you imagine a trailer park that's stacked like, 15 rows high with trailers on top of trailers? So yeah, so that was his reality. Also, you have a lot of like nerds and underdogs, and those are being like the ones, the haves and the have-nots. There's a lot of that, those themes in it. Who has power, influence, who has money, who doesn't, because that's really what matters in OASIS, as well as what can you do because if you don't have any money, you really can't do anything.
Right. Yeah, he's maybe the best video game player on the planet, and yet he can't go anywhere or do anything because he has no money. He has no capacity to do anything.
Right.
So that's a big one.
Yeah, there's one thing, he wanted to go somewhere, and he like literally can't. Doesn't have the credits. Right. Doesn't have the credits to do it. And,
yeah. It can't even teleport his virtual character anywhere.
Right. So it's almost like, wow, your virtual character's pretty sad also, because you can't do anything, because it all requires money to do anything.
Right.
Like real money from the real world.
So that was kind of like going to be their ticket, if they can potentially, find this Easter egg, or at least part of the Easter egg, and become famous. Maybe it can make some money. And then other kind of big themes here. Obsession. This is really all that they do, is to just try and find this money, try and understand this guy James Halliday's life. The individual versus the collective, and this evil corporation, the IOI corporation, is a big deal. And then this idea of connection versus disconnection. So it will make you think, and then after you're done thinking, then you'll be still kind of processing some of those themes. So there's a lot of really good stuff there.
All right, let's go into some information.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you. I know we've talked a little bit, but let's talk some more about this. So, what did you like best about the book, Jay?
Well, I grew up with 80s stuff. I was born in 1976, so I was like just a smidge of a teenager, and I would say kind of like preteen is even more potent when you're growing up on that stuff, like Star Wars. I remember watching when I was 7-8 years old. And so this kind of, there's so many things in this book. Like I wish that maybe on the internet there is somewhere the number of references to things in the 80s. Just absolutely fascinating. And
Yep.
so if you love 80s, if you love video games, if you love movies from that period of time, if you love John Hughes, if you love Star Wars, if you love anything science fiction, if you love anime, like, you're just going to be so happy, because he'll name check at least 7 or 8 things, no matter how weird or obscure they are, and you'll be like, nobody knows that, and he knows all of them. So
Right.
I loved, if nothing else, and there's a bunch of other stuff, if nothing else, that is worth the price of admission right there.
All right, so share a favorite quote or two.
This is
Actually, in interest of time, just give me your favorite quote.
Let's do this. I would say that this quote really grabbed me because it feels like it taps a lot into this book. He says, "If I was feeling depressed or frustrated about my lot in life, all I had to do was tap the Player 1 button, and my worries would instantly slip away as my mind focused itself on the relentless, pixelated onslaught on the screen in front of me. There, inside the game's two-dimensional universe, life was simple. It's just you against the machine. Move with your left hand, shoot with your right, and try to stay alive as long as possible."
That's cool. Good quote. All right. So, what did you learn from the book?
Once upon a time, I used to play video games a lot, and I remember a time when I would play Diablo 2. I'd wake up in the morning and play all day until, just all day, eat microwave burritos and ramen, and then go to bed at who knows what time at night. And then the few minutes extra that I had per day, I'd go to class. And it was like, oh yeah, there are other things besides video games, because you can get sucked into them.
Yeah. Yep. No, I can definitely see that, which is interesting too, because there's sort of that theme in this too. What did you like the least?
Honestly, I felt like the ending was cheap. He finishes with this quote. "That was when I realized," this is the main character, "that was when I realized, as terrifying and painful as reality can be, it's also the only place where you can find true happiness, because reality is real." It didn't quite hit for me. I felt like he was wanting it to be, like, he tied everything up kind of a little bit too nice in the novel, and I feel like there was too much darkness, and then at the end it's like, no, it's all good, here's a bunch of money, and blah blah blah, and everything wins, yay. So I don't know. It didn't quite work for me.
What questions would you ask the author?
I want to know how good Ernest Cline is at video games.
I'm sure at, like, the old school games, I'm sure he's pretty awesome. Any other related books? I'm
not going to recommend a book. I'm actually going to recommend a video game for everybody. If you haven't played Legend of Zelda, play Legend of Zelda. Spend some time. My favorite video game of all time is called Ocarina of Time, Legend of Zelda. All of the Legend of Zelda games are fantastic. They have so many great things in them. And if you haven't experienced the world, it's a world that you go into. It's not just a game. It's not just like, I'm going to go and, if you're a Call of Duty player, you run around and shoot some things, or you're like a Street Fighter where you just press a button and mash and you smash the other guy, and there's lots of flashes and stuff like that. You're a Fortnite player. If you've never played Legend of Zelda, you will get sucked in, and then you'll look up and you'll be like, where am I? What's going on right now? So it's a tremendous experience to be able to disappear into a world, much, I would say, arguably even better for me than many novels. Matt, let's turn the tables here and give you an opportunity to talk for a little bit. What did you like best about this book?
So what I really liked, I love the alternate reality kind of thing. I love how that works. To me, that's a big one, because that really sums up like I don't know, like a general unhappiness you could see with a lot of people, where they go like an escapism, and we have that. Not that this book was written a long time ago, but we we definitely have that with our like social media and all these other little outlets that we have. So, I mean, for me, that what I really enjoyed is like an escapism of this book.
Yeah, that's definitely a big theme throughout this entire book for sure, at multiple levels actually. Give me a favorite quote.
So there's a couple. Actually, I had a few. But I think my favorite that I really liked on here was I felt like a kid standing in the world's greatest video arcade without any quarters, unable to do anything but walk around and watch the other kids play. And that's sort of going into that theme of losing out and missing out. I think whether you're a video gamer or not, I think that, you can imagine being in that greatest video arcade ever and you have no money and you can just watch other people play. You can't do anything. So sort of you're in this surreal, amazing, awesome place that's maybe, your heart's desire, but you can't do anything about it.
It's a very poignant picture, and it definitely taps, even if you're not a big video game player, it taps into that feeling of like, I want it.
And then an arcade, for those of you who are millennials, was a place where there was a whole bunch of video games in one room, and you could actually go in, you'd have to put a quarter in, then you could play that game. Because you didn't have them at your house.
And that was part of the joy also, because you didn't have to be in your house. What did you learn from this book?
I really like the idea of having of finding a connection where what is a true connection? Is a true connection in reality? Is a true connection in this virtual reality? Which one is real? Are they both real? What is real? As far as how this book puts forward. So I think for me, it's like, it kind of bends your perception on, really what is real. Sort of like, looking at the Matrix. Like, I know this steak isn't real, but everything is telling me when I cut it and I eat it, it is real. Anyway, it's sort of like that.
That is definitely something that you get a feeling of as you go through the book for sure. What'd you like least?
And so I'll wrap up with this, and then we got to close. So really with this, I would say my critique is not so much with the book, although I agree with your point at the end. It seemed buttoned up in a happy, like, almost like a happy 80s movie, that just like, and they all lived happily ever after. It's like, it's way bleak, and I guess for the protagonist, it could have ended, it didn't have to end so wonderfully well. I would have actually liked for his love interest to have been a fat 40-year-old dude or something like that. I think
Chuck,
that would have
named Chuck, actually, yeah.
Exactly. I think that would have been so much better. Just because. But anyway, so no, I would say, I don't know. I would just say it's a little unrealistic. So, as far as it buttoning everything up so nice. So
gotcha.
Anyway, fantastic book. You guys should all read it, listen to it, and if you haven't watched the movie's great too. They're just sort of slightly different. Although, hey, read it and then watch the movie and tell about your differences.
See what you think, guys. Book Ready Player One, Ernest Cline. Thank you for listening to the Superior Men Bookcast. We will talk to you again soon.
A reader lives 1,000 lives before he dies. The man who never reads lives only one. Thank you for listening to the Superior Men Bookcast. Share it with a friend. You heard our thoughts. Go read it for yourself.